Welcome to the Deepak Saini Show.
He said he gon' huff and puff and blow my mind up. You meet the island girl, she might dirty wind up.
Welcome to the Deepak Saini Show. I'd like to thank J23 for her intro music. You can find a link to her music in the show description. Today my guests are Antonia Van Becker and Greg Lee. Antonia and Greg are the founders of Self Health Institute, and their mission is to empower clients by turning problems that block their success into golden opportunities so they can move forward with clarity and confidence. Since 1995, they've been using their signature CoreTalk Holistic Healing to guide healers, conscious entrepreneurs, business owners, and coaches towards successful outcomes by asking simple questions and getting life-changing answers. Now, they didn't put it in their bio, but I do have a copy of their book here that our whole family has read, not my youngest, but all of us have read, so maybe we'll come and talk about that later. I'll just put that up there. Antonia and Greg, welcome to the Deepak Saini Show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Can't wait to talk to you.
Awesome. I've been looking for this for a while. We just recently met, like just a few months ago, and hit it off. So I'm glad to have you on the show. I always like to start off the podcast with, how did you get into, what you guys are doing now? I know you guys had corporate careers, and previously, because I like to say, most kids don't grow up thinking, I want to do this type of transformational work or what have you. So feel free to go as far back as you want, and I'd love to hear your guys' story.
Yeah, it's so interesting when you talk about it as kids not thinking about, transformational work. My dad had a subscription to Prevention magazine, and Prevention was like way ahead of its time. So, talking about kind of the root causes of illness, and in the 60s and 70s, this was kind of like, what do you do to get healthier? And so as I was growing up, there were the special types of smoothies, all the things that you might do to enhance your health. And early on, I realized that I had this ability to touch someone and know exactly what was happening with their body. And I didn't really even think about it. It was just natural to me. But as I grew up, I really embraced that, and I became a massage therapist. But in my 20s, Antonia and I were working corporate jobs, trying to figure out, what are we going to do? And we weren't really following that true direction of, this is our purpose and our passion and what we love to do. We were doing stuff to support our young family, and we thought that it was really the best thing for us. But what we didn't know is that it was making us sick. Mm-hmm. And that thing kind of evolved into something where Antonia had something that happened to her that really almost took her down. It's that thing where it doesn't look obvious. It doesn't look like, I got this chronic disease and for years I suffered and blah, blah, blah. It wasn't like that. It was like immune system down.
Blood
poisoning. Uh-oh. Doctor, fill her with antibiotics, that type of thing. And it happened in a moment when she was 8 months pregnant. And it really, she realized.
That must have been super scary at that time.
It's super scary and super fast. And so because it was so fast in the realization, you have a red line going up your arm, almost all the way up there. And thank goodness I was in the doctor's office at the time. And they had this quick solution to it so that it didn't have any bad effects. And I was able to actually walk away and be like, oh my God, this could have killed me and the baby. And I really should look at what my body is doing and why it's not functioning, why that happened from raking leaves and a blister on my hand, And one of the problems was that I was so busy in corporate and with the second baby that I was just like, oh, fine, I need to keep going. And so even though I had this big revelation that, whoa, that was a lot and dangerous, I was just nose to the grindstone, keep working my corporate job, and just moved on. I mean, I knew mentally, but I didn't integrate that knowledge into action.
And what's interesting is 6 months later, I came back from a business trip abroad, and I was like a rock physically, as far as didn't get sick, it was in great shape. And that was probably, I was in the best shape of my life at that moment. We had a 5-month-old baby, things were great. But when I got back, I had this gastrointestinal thing.
Mm.
It went on for 6 months. And in that 6 months, I lost 40 pounds. So I went from being this incredibly healthy person to like having very questionable health. And at the end of the 6 months, my doctor said, Greg, there's nothing medically wrong with you. It was like, what does
What
that
is
mean?
that? Yeah.
So what's happening? And I left his appointment and I was starving all the time. And I went to Whole Foods, which was a brand new store in 1992. And I came face to face with one of the teachers in my massage certification class from 15 years earlier. And I said, wow, I've been meaning to come and see you. She was an energetic healer. And she said, I know your pancreas is really in trouble. And I was like, what? And I went to see her. And in the 90-minute session that we did, she did a lot of metabolic testing, figuring out what my body was doing and what it wasn't doing as far as the digestive process.
Right.
Using muscle testing.
Using muscle testing. And I left that session completely healed. It's like I didn't have, and I had diarrhea for 6 months previously, and it completely healed it. So it really lit a fire under us of, wow, this is amazing. It took us a few years to transition. Then we took her certification course. We apprenticed with her thousands of hours, and that was it. Self-Health Institute was born in 1995, and we never looked back.
And one of the things that happened in addition is that from my childhood, I grew up in a bit of a dysfunctional family with alcoholics and history of suicide, drug abuse, and all that kind of stuff. And what I had been experiencing through, which was worsened by the 60, 70 hours of working in
Right.
Silicon Valley and traveling and all this stuff, was that I had chronic bronchitis or pneumonia several times a year and chronic IBS. So the irritable bowel syndrome, and those things would regularly take me down
Right.
over this 20-year period. And so one of the interesting things that we found out doing this work is that I was able to heal those chronic conditions over time, so that now I have a little remnants of them here and there, but for the most part, they're completely gone. So
Amazing.
that's
So
really what
yeah,
drove us.
yeah. A couple things before we move on here. So first off, just in chronological is how they came up in mind. Greg, you said very early on, I knew you said that you had a sense of like you could just touch someone and feel like there was something off with, like how old are you? Just curious, like roughly how old are you when you kind of had that sense that you had that ability?
I remember the first time my dad came home from a chiropractic appointment, and he said, Greg, I think she missed something in my back. I was 12. So he laid down on the floor. I knew exactly the spot. I actually did a chiropractic adjustment on him. I had no idea. I'd never been to a chiropractor, but I just did it. So then from that time on, I would go up and touch somebody and they'd say, how did you know that was the spot where I've got this pain? So, and that just kept
12.
going. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Antonio, when you were talking about your story, I didn't want to interrupt you, but you were talking about that, the corporate woman and got young kids at home. And, like I'm like even like thinking of my wife to some degree, but like so many people I come across that are so many women that are like in that cycle trying to, build their career, do the overtime, regardless of industry, young family, maybe aging parents, and they're like pulled in all directions and their health is the last thing they take care of. And then it's till it's breaks. Right.
100%. Yeah, because, and I think part of the underlying condition is the fatigue involved, being pulled in so many directions and having to get the kids to daycare really early and then picking them up late and then making dinner and, all of that stuff. One of the first number one things it hits is your immune system, because you're not getting the sleep, the rest, the downtime that you need.
Yeah, absolutely. And when my wife still works corporate, when I worked corporate too, like we were in that cycle. We were the first parents to drop off and almost the last parents to pick up because you're working these long hours and that whole deal. So I'm going to transition also based on something you said about, the Antonia, the environment that you grew up in as a child. I think that's a logical segue to, what is called, and, we do some similar type of work. It's different, but, I don't talk necessarily about ACEs so much, but I'd love for one of you to describe what ACEs are and then like how that can impact our health over our lifetime.
Yeah, and so ACEs are adverse childhood experiences, and there's something that almost every single person experiences in their youth. And in the 70s, the CDC
It
and
was in the 90s.
in the 90s,
Yeah,
thank you.
mid-90s.
The CDC and Kaiser did a study, and it was called How Adverse Experiences Affect Health Across a Lifetime. And they worked with 17,000 people and did a simple survey about what happened in their youth, basically. And they had like, how many was it?
There's
Like
10.
10 points about whether there was domestic violence, whether the person individually experienced a physical assault, a sexual assault, whether there was alcoholism in the family, whether there was emotional abuse, or whether there was neglect, whether there was suicide or divorce or separation in the family, or if someone in the family was incarcerated. So just asking questions about whether you saw your mother being hit, or whether you were hit, or whether, anything about sexual abuse, all of these different things. And you can come up with an ACEs score that, the results of which, obviously, if you only have one ACE, then you have less of what the findings of the studies were, that you would have less of a health impact across your lifetime. But they found that many, many people had 4 or more, and those people that had a score of 4 or more were like
3.5, usually 3.5 to 5 times more likely to get
ischemic heart
ischemic heart
disease,
disease, lung cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure. So it was like and they did a kind of a fact check after 20 years of doing the survey with those 17,000 people. And in 2015, they came back and said, okay, the people who had these higher number of ACEs, this is what happened to them. So it was really had that substance to it.
Yeah,
the
so
study.
the more ACEs that you have, the higher the health and the worst impacts that you have, and it across your entire lifetime. And so it also includes, like, being an alcoholic, or being prone to suicide, or having eating disorders. And what has been so interesting in the last several years, I mean, I think I get this Brain and Life magazine, and they were just talking about how they are seeing that people with more ACEs have a much higher percentage of migraines. So there's still a lot of data coming up that is hooking more and more health issues, not only physiological health, but they're also looking, and what we look at is also procrastination and self-doubt and perfectionism. All of these toxic behaviors and habits get hooked into these adverse experiences, and then we continue those behaviors, which also impacts our general physiological health across the entire lifetime.
Yeah, I think I'd love to get your take on this, but here's, it's kind of like double impact, right? Like you get that mental health hit, if you will, that also impacts our physical health. And then you also get those, as you mentioned, some pattern behaviors, like you saw your parents smoke or whatever, or they drank a lot, they were alcoholics, then and then you just pick up that habit, whether you unconsciously that you want to, and then you are more likely to have those physical health effects as well. So it's like you're almost like a double whammy when you experience these things as a child. You're shaking your head, so I'm guessing you're agreeing with me.
Yes, that's totally it. And the one thing I forgot to mention, which is so important, is what they found is that the reason they did it on children, and they call it on, for childhood adverse experiences, is because that age from 1 to 17 is when your brain is developing the most. And even in like one, ages up to 2 or up to 3, when there's like incredible brain development, is that if you have those adverse experiences in those time frames, then you actually see the non-development of some parts of the brain, the executive function, and it really negatively impacts the ability of that child to think ahead, to be able to visualize what they want to be and what they want to do. And it slows their learning, their conceptualization. It has this huge impact on those young brains. And that's part of what leads to these bad health outcomes and work outcomes, well-being outcomes throughout their lifetime.
So how could one identify ACEs and maybe themselves, or if someone's a teacher, maybe in a student, or a coach in a player, like how can we identify them if we don't know, or even in ourselves, if we don't remember ourselves that maybe these things happen to us?
I mean, one of the things, they created the survey, and it's really simple. The 10 questions, we actually have an ACEs quiz.
I've taken it.
Right?
Yeah.
We could give that to you for your people if you want.
Yeah, so that might be a helpful thing. But also, many times the really adverse experiences are ones that the brain will block. And we have a lot of people, as we're working with them energetically, their body will take us back to an age, say, for example, 7. And we ask the person, what happened at 7? And they say, I have no idea. I don't remember 7 at all. That's a big clue. So if you have areas of your life where you think, yeah, I just don't remember this time, that's a real clue that there's some stuff going on in that age. So then it's kind of like, well, what do you do about that? And that's kind of what we do is tapping into the body's energetic experience of what happened at that age. We can actually talk to the body. So, when people ask us, well, what's the difference between what you do and other energetic therapies? And it is that we literally talk out loud to the body and ask it questions about why it's acting the way it is. And does it have a solution for this? And it always will take us either to an experience or an emotion that might be active presently or at a past age. And we work with that emotion, how it is in the body, and the body starts to release the settings that it created as kind of like a stay safe strategy from those adverse experiences.
And I just want to add what's been so interesting, and Nadine Burke-Harris did a beautiful TED Talk about ACEs, and she was the first California Surgeon General, and her pediatric practice was actually at Bayview Hunters Point in San Francisco, which is a rough neighborhood here. And so she saw the effects of ACEs firsthand. But one of the things they talk about a lot in the medical world is they basically said there's no cure for ACEs. We can address what happened, the physiological issues and symptoms that are presented afterwards, or, the mental and emotional effects of it, but there's no cure for what happened, except maybe to have a supportive adult there. And that's very helpful in mitigating the effects of ACEs. And what we found over decades is that our energetic work actually heals the core issue of the ACEs, so that then all of the symptoms can dissipate throughout and across the lifetime as well. And so that's when we got excited.
Yeah, I was going to say, as you were saying that they said, oh, there's no cure. For those who are not watching video, only listening to audio, I was shaking my head and Greg was smiling because I don't agree with that. Obviously, as you guys know, and certainly with the work I do. Before we move on, I'd love to get your perspective on this. Again, we do different modalities, but kind of tackle sort of a similar thing. I've had to go back with clients to birth or even past generations a number of times to get to that root cause. Do you guys experience that as well, going that far back?
Absolutely.
It's, we're complicated beings, and what we take on as we're in the womb is a really complicated, complex mix of what our parents have gone through. And what they've gone through is that same complex mix that their parents and past generations have gone through. So it's even in part of the genetic structure, as we have this energetic reality that is our psychophysical genetic reality. It's from birth, but what's amazing is that, we are ageless souls. And that soul brings forward so many things that don't have to do with genetics. And it's those things that also influence that psychogenetic, psychophysical realm. So being able to ask and access that information is life-changing for people who have felt stuck in a setting that didn't make sense to them, maybe from their soul journey or from the way they wanted to be. And they kind of felt like, what happened? How did I get here in this family? And why am I not able to do what I want and feel the way I want to feel?
Yeah. And so Greg was saying about being complicated, and that's what you started out with. There's not only, the life that we're living with, the nature versus nurture and such, and adding that generational trauma or impact from what our family line has been through. But what Greg was referring to is the whole past life scenarios and what has happened that were outside our genetic line, but that is part of our soul's journey. And what we have found is that those core issues that exist in this lifetime were playing out in our generational patterns as well as in our past lives, in order so that at this current time in our life, in this human body, that we are to work those issues out. And that's why we're here, is to do all that healing at the present moment so that we can continue to uplift and upgrade and enlighten ourselves.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Now, you might have already answered this in your previous response, but like maybe if you could just expand a bit more. How does one like heal the impacts of, there's certainly traumas that have happened as adults, but we're kind of focusing here on like childhood events. How does one actually heal these? And again, you may have already touched on it, but please elaborate a bit more.
Yeah, what we've seen is that when the experience happens where the difficulty, staying attuned to what's best for you, or where something becomes so uncomfortable that your strategies don't work anymore, when that stuff happens, it's like, how do I get back in balance? So when we're in our adult time and the body says, gosh, there's some difficulty going on, and let me show you that through this illness or through this, imbalance in your system. Maybe it's even mental, but so many times it shows up physically first. And if you can access that information, and what we do is just literally talk to the body, we can go to the time when it happened, and we can ask the body, where is this stuck? And what we've realized in working with meridians and chakras in the body is that when we have emotions, the energetic body pulls it into the tissue via the meridians. And when you study traditional Chinese medicine, there's specific emotions that are connected with specific meridians. So it gives us a whole roadmap of where those emotions might be stuck. So for example, the bladder and kidney meridian will take in huge fear. And that imbalance will stay in the system and sometimes be spiked depending on what experience you're going through. If we can go back and ask the body, where's the stuck emotion that's causing this problem, like high blood pressure, ischemic heart disease, and it says, let's go to an age and look at fear. And then we can clear it through the bladder and kidney meridian. Then the body says, I don't have to hold on to that anymore. I'm going to now create flow in balance in bladder
Right.
and kidney, which is about confidence and being okay in the moment and welcoming what comes toward you.
And that's why so often, perhaps, I mean, one thing that can happen is like we have a woman client who gets UTIs, 3 or 4 times a year, right? And then we find out, oh, maybe there was some abuse, or maybe, she wasn't allowed to use the restroom as much as she needed. Or maybe she was beaten until she peed or I mean, there's so many scenarios.
Right. Right.
And so when you start clearing that fear out of the bladder and out of the kidney meridians, then all of a sudden, like Greg says, that congestion, that stagnation in the whole, urinary system starts to lift. Everything starts to flow more freely. And then you see, oh my gosh, well, she did get one UTI this year, but that's when she was under a whole lot of stress and this was happening, that was happening. But you see this beautiful convergence of the flow in the body's meridian system, which creates flow in the actual physiology of the body, that all of a sudden leads to more health in the organs that those meridians impact.
So I understand that, the different emotions are going to impact different systems, different meridians, and it's going to be scattershot. But in your guys' experience, is there one emotion and one meridian, one organ that's like tends to be an outlier, like has a little bit more trouble, or more people have a little bit more trouble with that?
Yeah, it's really interesting when you talk to kind of transformational gurus, people who do tons of personal and self-development, they'll say there's two emotions. There's anger and there's fear. So, and many times that will even go down to fear.
Yes.
That anger is like the thing that comes out, but it's because I'm afraid,
Right.
there's resentment or regret or whatever it is. So it really, bladder and kidney are kind of the top two that many times the body will say, let's clear this out and see if we can get some flow. The ones after that are around rage and frustration. So, and when these are really important ones, because, for all the listeners, when you look at your reactions over time, what's the hardest thing to express? It usually is anger, because as children, we weren't allowed to express it. And then it just gets bottled up and it really affects the way the gallbladder and the liver function. And those two organs are probably the most important organs as far as being able to use our resources properly and to be able to have our digestive system really be in balance. So when rage can go from, this sudden outbreak of toxic emotion that makes everybody feel like, whoa, what's going on? When that can move from that to, I don't think that's best for me. I'm going to do this instead. When that happens, the flow of creativity, which is what gallbladder and liver are all about, starts to become so much easier for the person, and they begin to be able to make decisions for themselves that are really in their best interests. And the health advantages of that are incredible.
What emotion is tied to the heart?
Yeah, the heart is really complex because they're more guarded emotions. Because when we experienced what I need to do as a kid to get love, a lot of times those things were very exposing, and they many times also were focused around things that weren't that healthy. So when mom would, feel bad about what she'd done, but, would say that I really love you, have some ice cream.
Yes,
So
so that actually I mean, obviously heart is usually about heartbreak and the lack of love and things like that. But what really happens as well is what Greg's talking about, is that what does love mean to you?
Right.
And this is where we get into all the addictions and
Addictions, weight gain, all these stuff.
all
Yeah.
of that kind of stuff, because we all go, how do we self-soothe? we self-soothe by trying to love ourselves. And that means, oh, I need a glass of wine at night, or I need, more ice cream, or I need to go shopping, or I need to have more sex, or whatever. There's so many things
Right.
that we can go to that looks like love for us.
Would you agree that probably the number, not tying on emotions, but limiting beliefs, the number one limiting belief is I'm unlovable? Would you guys agree with that?
And it's so complicated because what do I have to do to get love? And, how does that affect me? And what's happened in the past when I loved someone, and then I didn't really get the response that I thought I would. So I must not be worthy of having love. And what's really complicated is that then we start to guard the secrets around love,
Yes.
why I'm not lovable. And
Right.
these deep, dark secrets that we keep from when we're children about why I can't talk about stuff that happens in my family because nobody will love me if I do.
And so directly with what you were asking, I think, I'm not sure if it's I'm, unlovable or unworthy. I think those are really,
Yeah, I think they're really like one,
Really-
2, 1A, 1B,
exactly,
type thing.
exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. This has been a fascinating conversation. I mean, we're similar line. We could riff on this for hours, I'm sure. I do want to take a little bit of a bit of a different direction here as we slowly start to wrap up the podcast here. Obviously, we're both, all three of us are really into health. This is not necessarily a health related podcast per se, but I do like to ask, what does your, and you each can answer, what is your morning routine or a non-negotiable for your health?
Yeah, well, the first thing that we do when we wake up is meditate. And then we listen to some inspirational stuff about what is going on in the cosmos, just to tune into the day. And then we take a walk almost every day, try and walk a couple miles. And we do intermittent fasting. So we'll, have a drink and not eat anything till a little bit later. But the other non-negotiable
A
is
drink of water,
have a drink,
not
not
an
a drink,
alcoholic
of
drink.
course not, but
I,
tea,
I made that assumption, but thank you for clarifying, Greg, just
Thank
in case
you.
anyone was unclear.
AM, the AM, whatever. Yeah, and then for us, we do a lot of karate as
Oh.
well. So I got my black belt in karate in April. So we love to go to karate class a couple times in the morning and sometimes at night. And we try and move a lot, although we're stuck with Zoom sometimes a lot. So it can be challenging, but yeah, moving the body and doing CoreTalk, probably every day, whenever we feel stuck, whenever we feel something is off, we talk to our bodies and get back into tune and into flow.
Yeah, I'd say my non-negotiable is really related with that. When I feel out of sorts, when I feel like, God, I don't like the way I feel right now, when I have emotions that come up that have that presence in my mind and my body, like, this is not the me I want to be, the non-negotiable is that I have to change that. I
Take
have to
time.
do something to bring myself back into balance. And I love tapping into the body's inner wisdom to be able to do that. And it's really our passion is to be able to offer that to other people and teach and show them that way of being able to access this incredible information that we have in our bodies that's just waiting to be used in a way that can help us do what we want to do, be the way we want to be, have what we want to have, so that our life can really be enhanced by the things that looked so difficult in the past.
Right.
You can start to hold those as these jewels of information and experience that we can heal. And then that can be really our source of moving forward and being more comfortable in the moment.
I love that. And I forgot about when we first met about the karate angle. And I can't remember that. So sorry for the audience. I'm going to go a little geeky here for 1 second. But I think I shared, or maybe I didn't, but my older daughter just started karate. And just like 2 weeks ago or 2 Saturdays ago, did her test for her first belt. So we're just waiting for the results. after the holiday break we're on right now. So yeah, so
Wonderful.
my daughter's in
Yay.
karate now. So yeah, she's very excited. She's very disciplined, and she's like, I have to, like, she can go as many times every day if she wants. Well, not Sundays, but she could go every day. But she's like very like 3 times a week. Like, hey, I couldn't go on Wednesday because you didn't let me go, so I need to go Friday. And so
Yes.
she's really into that. So I love
I
that.
love that. And Greg has his purple belt, and he actually in January is gonna test for his brown belt.
Awesome.
Moving on.
Good luck. Good luck. So you guys also have a free gift for the listeners. 3 powerful ways to tap into your body's inner wisdom. Could you, one of you, describe what that is?
Yeah, and we'll let the listeners go and see it so you can really experience it for yourself. But it's really, we talked a little bit about what we do to those non-negotiables. So it talks about those non-negotiables and then gives detail of how to get into that. And then, of course, one of the things we love is to bring people into our community so that they can really use what we've developed over these 3 decades. And, the 3 decades are just the front end of it. What we're doing goes back millennia as far as our teachers and things that we like to bring in. So the 3 powerful ways to tap into your body's wisdom, these are ancient tools that have kind of a neat modern age update to them. So it gives people access to kind of the front end of what we're talking about when it's all about being able to heal the things that have held you back so that they can become really your source of being able to go forward in a powerful way.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to download. I always download all the guests' free gifts and that sort of thing to try it out for myself. I encourage everyone to do that as well. And don't worry, all the links for Antonia and Greg and the free gift. And I don't know if you sent me the book link, but send me the book link. We'll get that. Everyone get the book as well. I'll be in the show notes underneath the interview here. So everything will be there on how to connect with them on social, and I'm sure they'd love to hear from you. So last question, you both can answer before we head out. What's one last little, golden nugget or words of wisdom you'd like to leave the audience with today?
So I have my tried and true golden nugget that I use every single moment of every day is be here now. So whenever you find yourself worrying about the past or regretting your past or fearing the future, you're not in the present moment. Being in the present moment is where the healing happens. It's where the joy happens, the connection happens, the love happens. Being right here, right now is the place to be. And it is a practice. It's not easy. But if you concentrate on it, it bears beautiful gifts.
I love that. Being present. Awesome. Greg?
Well, and I always like to piggyback on Antonia's favorite, because mine is to go just one step into that. And because people will say, well, how do I do that? What do I do to be, in the moment? We do this thing called breathing. And if we pay attention to it, just even, okay, what's the temperature of the breath, the air that comes in my mouth or my nose? And then what's the temperature as it goes out? And how does it feel down my diaphragm or, beneath my ribs when I take a breath in? And what's it like when I take a breath out? And focusing on the breath has been like the transcendental, transformative, everything about every guru that's ever talked about how you get from where you are to be where you are is through your breath.
I love that. I love both answers. I want to thank both of you for being guests today on the Deepak Saini Show. It took a little bit for us to get together, but I've been so happy that you were able to be on. So yeah, my appreciations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful interview. Wonderful.
I appreciate it. So I'm going to throw it back to J23, who's going to guide us out with some music. Don't forget to check out all the links that Greg and Antonia have provided in the show notes here. Also, don't forget to check out today's show sponsor, as well as a couple of new free resources for myself. Again, they'll all be below the interview there. All right. Thanks again, everyone, for listening to the Deepak Saini Show. Remember, exceptional results for the exceptional you. Till next time. This episode is brought to you by Optimizer's Mass Zymes. This is digestive enzymes that helps you break down your protein, fats, starches, and sugars. I've been using this product for, gosh, over a year now, specifically in a protein heavy meal, because I really want to break down my protein to make sure I get the amino acids that I need for maintaining muscle growth, maintaining lean muscle mass. Super important as we age and all stages of life, really. So again, huge proponent of Masszymes. Check out the link below to see how you can get at least 10% off, if not more. Cheers.
Podcast produced by the Minted Green Company,